a brand new pot to piss in. Trying to school my partners, I don't think they pay attention. I'm sticking to my vision on the road to the riches. Every single day I'm a hustle on a mission. Trying to get 100 M's, nigga, I ain't kidding. I'm on a mission, 24/7, 365 until I reach the heavens.
What's good, y'all? Hold on. I see I have to change my battery. So while I do that,
Hey, I'm a hustle on a mission. Grinding for that spot, a brand new pot to piss in. Trying to school my partners, I don't think they pay attention. I'm sticking to my vision on the road to the riches. Every single day I'm a hustle on a mission. Trying to get 100 M's, nigga, I ain't kidding. I'm on a mission, 24/7, 365 until I reach the heavens.
welcome back. I changed my battery. All right. Happy Black History Month. If you give a fuck about that shit. Yeah. You can see the title, right? See the title, see what it says? Disney's hidden war against Black America. And I feel like this is probably going to piss me off because I've had my daughter watching a lot of Disney in her spare time. But recently, not too long ago, about a few months ago, I've switched over to Looney Tunes, the baby version. But anyway, we finna see what the fuck going on with this shit. Uh, Everybody has a hidden war against the black man, even the black man. And even the black woman. Everybody has everybody has a hidden agenda, a hidden war against us. Why? I don't know. Don't ask me. I was just made this way. But we're finna get into this shit. I'm just trying to prepare myself for the bullshit of wickedness that I may be approaching on. Embarking on. A lot of different words to go with that. Before we start, welcome to the Lit House. Welcome to the Lit House. Whatever you do, keep the light within you shining bright. You feel me? Fuck that shade, get paid, and that's every single motherfucking day. And this is Home Meat TV. Hustlers on a mission every day. And this is another real nigga reaction. Stop through, get you some R&R, a little rest and relaxation with a real nigga reaction. You feel me? And never forget, real niggas do what they want to do. Bitch niggas do what they can. Hoe ass niggas gonna talk about it and fuck niggas gonna hate regardless. I promise you that. So do your shit to the motherfucking fullest, nigga. I don't give a fuck what they think, and you shouldn't either. Oh God, I promise you, you better not give a fuck what they think, boy. I'm telling you, you gonna fuck yourself up out some money. But fuck it. With that being said, without any further ado.
In 1946, the NAACP picketed movie theaters across America to stop children from seeing a Disney film. That movie was Song of the South. And civil rights leaders knew something that most parents didn't. Disney wasn't just making cartoons anymore. They were manufacturing supremacist kids, rap catchy songs, and characters. What they discovered would expose how America's most trusted family brand spent decades programming children to see whiteness as magic and blackness as comedy, servants, or nothing at all. Everything you think you know about Disney's innocent past is a lie. From 1928 through the 1960s, Walt Disney Studio didn't just reflect American racism. They perfected it, packaged it, and sold it to every family in America. While other studios made films for adults who already had their racial views formed, Disney specialized in catching children early, using animation and theme parks to embed white supremacist ideology so deep that generations of kids would never even notice it was there. The FBI knew Disney was reliable enough to use as an informant during the Red Scare. Civil rights organizations knew Disney was dangerous enough to organize national boycotts. But somehow, your history teachers never mentioned any of this.
Why?
Here's what the Mouse House spent 70 years trying to hide.
Because the English teachers are the same people that promoting and empowering white supremacy. It's the system that they built. That's why niggas should get out of their system, educate themselves, and our people got to educate ourselves, bro. You got to educate your own children. You feel? We got to have our own cartoons. We got to have our own images. You feel me? That's what we got to do as melanated people.
They didn't stumble into racist content by accident. They built their empire on a deliberate system of racial hierarchy that made white characters the heroes of every story, while reducing black people to minstrel show punchlines, grateful servants, or invisible ghosts haunting the edges of American history. And when civil rights leaders tried to stop them, Disney didn't just ignore the criticism, they doubled down, creating theme parks that turned white nostalgia into a literal magic kingdom, while erasing black contributions to the same history they were selling as patriotic education. But how did a cartoon mouse become one of the most powerful propaganda tools in American history? How did
a fucking rat? A fucking rat. A fucking rat. The signs have always been there. It's a fucking rat. Niggas and rats ain't never.
Disney convinced millions of families that their racial fantasies were just wholesome entertainment? And why are they only now admitting what civil rights leaders tried to tell America over 70 years ago? Mickey Mouse made his debut in 1928, but Disney's racial programming started immediately. Those early cartoons weren't just experimenting with animation techniques, they were beta testing racial humor that came straight from minstrel shows. Characters' faces would turn black from explosions, presented as comedy. Mickey and Friends performed Uncle Tom's Cabin in blackface in a 1933 cartoon called Mickey's Melodrama. While other studios hid their racist content in live-action films aimed at adults, Disney was delivering the same minstrel show stereotypes directly to children, disguised as harmless animal antics and slapstick comedy. This wasn't accidental borrowing from American culture. Walt Disney and his animators were deliberately drawing from vaudeville and minstrel traditions, but they were doing something more insidious than their predecessors. They were training children to see racial mockery as normal entertainment. When kids laughed at Mickey in blackface, they weren't just enjoying a cartoon. They were learning that black identity was a costume white characters could put on for laughs, something ridiculous and temporary that existed for their amusement. If you believe these hidden stories about how Disney shaped American racial attitudes deserve to be told, subscribe to Black Stories Untold and help us expose the truth they've been hiding for decades.
Yeah, we finna subscribe to y'all.
They don't want you to know about it.
We definitely subscribing to them. Because I want to know more. I have to know more.
How one American racial attitudes deserve to be told. Subscribe to Black Stories Untold and help us expose the truth they've been hiding for decades. These aren't just old cartoons we're talking about. This is about how one company programmed generations of children to see race the way white supremacists wanted them to. Now, back to the video. By 1940, Disney had perfected their formula with Fantasia, a film they promoted as high art for sophisticated audiences. The original theatrical version included a black centaur character named Sunflower in the Pastoral Symphony sequence, designed with every racist stereotype you can imagine, and relegated to serving white centaurs like a plantation servant. When civil rights pressure mounted years later, Disney didn't apologize. They just quietly removed Sunflower from all future releases, pretending she never existed.
And that's
how confident they were in their system. They could make black characters disappear from their own films, and most audiences would never even notice. But Sunflower was just practice for what came next. In 1941, Disney released Dumbo, featuring a group of crows who spoke in minstrel show dialects and taught a white elephant how to fly. The crow characters weren't just stereotypical, they were a masterclass in how to make racist caricature seem helpful and friendly. Kids watching Dumbo learned that
spoken what kind of dialect? They spoke like niggas.
In 1941, Disney released Dumbo, featuring a group of crows who spoke in minstrel show dialects.
Minstrel show dialects. They spoke like niggas from a specific time period. They spoke like niggas.
And taught a white elephant how to fly. The crow characters weren't just stereotypical. They were a masterclass in how to make racist caricature seem helpful and friendly. Kids watching Dumbo learned that black characters existed to serve white protagonists, that their value came from entertaining white people with their colorful dialect and musical abilities, and that they should be grateful just to be included in the story at all. The lead crow wasn't officially named Jim Crow, but Disney knew exactly what they were referencing, and so did every adult who understood the connection to Jim Crow segregation laws. During World War II,
you know what? I was going to take my daughter to Disney World. I'm glad I didn't. Fuck Disney.
Disney's propaganda partnership with the U.S. government revealed just how powerful their influence had become. The studio that had spent over a decade training children to see racial hierarchy as natural entertainment was now officially working with federal agencies to shape American attitudes about enemies and allies. Disney produced military training films filled with racial caricatures of Japanese people, using the same animation techniques they perfected.
Further proving that this shit is systemic from the government as well, bro. The government don't give a fuck about you, bro, as a nigga, bro. As a black American, bro, as a indigenous motherfucker to this land, bro. They don't respect that shit. They shape this shit. They brainwash an entire, they brainwash the children from the beginning for generations with this racist ass bullshit. Subconsciously brainwashing niggas. They don't have no clue. Brainwashing their children. I was having a discussion about cartoons today at work. And this shit pop up on my on my screen. And guess what we doing? A reaction to a real nigga reaction to this fuck nigga shit. That's exactly what this is. Fuck nigga shit.
For domestic racial stereotypes, the government trusted Disney to program soldiers' racial attitudes because they'd already proven they could program children's. But Disney's masterpiece of racial manipulation was still coming. In 1946, they released Song of the South, combining live action and animation to tell stories about a cheerful black man entertaining white children on a plantation. The film never explicitly stated whether slavery had ended, creating a deliberate ambiguity that let audiences imagine a world where black people were content in their subordinate roles, grateful for the opportunity to serve white families, and naturally gifted at providing comfort and entertainment without expecting equality in return. Civil rights leaders saw exactly what Disney was doing. The NAACP organized protests before the film even hit theaters, picketing premieres and writing directly to NAACP organized protests before.
They got old ass, they got new pictures looking old because that say justice for George Floyd. I had to rewind that just because that shit blow. I like George Floyd. This is not one of them pictures. They just made it look like one of them pictures from back then.
Before the film even hit theaters, picketing premieres and writing directly to Walt Disney, demanding he cancel the release. Walter White, the NAACP's executive secretary, warned that Song of the South would undo decades of progress in challenging stereotypes about black people, essentially providing a Disney-branded argument that plantation life wasn't so bad, and black people were happiest when they knew their place. Disney released Song of the South anyway.
Dirty motherfucker.
The film was commercially successful, won an Academy Award for Best Song with Zippity Doo-Dah, and gave James Baskett an honor.
Zippity Doo-Dah? Zippity Doo-Dah Day. Zippity Doo-Dah, huh? Zippity Doo-Dah? All right. What the fuck was this song?
Won an Academy Award for Best Song with Zippity Doo-Dah, and gave James Baskett an honorary Oscar for his performance as Uncle Remus. But here's the detail that reveals everything about American racial attitudes in 1946. Baskett couldn't attend the film's Atlanta premiere because of segregation laws. Disney created a movie celebrating black servitude, gave the Black Star an award for his performance, but couldn't guarantee him a seat at his own movie's opening night. The company was perfectly comfortable profiting from black performance while accepting that black humanity was negotiable depending on local white preferences. What happened next proves that Disney knew exactly how problematic their racial content was. As civil rights movements gained power through the 1950s and 1960s, Disney didn't defend Song of the South or argue for its historical value. Instead, they locked it in the vault, never releasing it on home video in the United States, while quietly continuing to profit from its characters and songs. This wasn't a company learning from past mistakes. This was a company managing their brand image while preserving their right to exploit racial content when convenient. Meanwhile, Disney was building something even more powerful than films: theme parks that would literally construct white American identity as a physical space children could walk through and experience. When Disneyland opened in 1955, Main Street USA presented an idealized version of small-town America circa 1900 to 1910, complete with barbershop quartets, horse-drawn carriages, and turn-of-the-century charm. What it didn't include were any black people. Despite the fact that Black Americans were very much part of small.
I needed to see this bullshit. I needed to see this shit, Walt Disney. I needed to see this shit, YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. I needed to see this racist ass piece of shit as I needed to see this piece of history. I needed to see this shit. I needed to see this. I got some cartoon characters I've been trying to draw a storyline up about certain shit for so long. For so long. I just been thinking about how to do this cartoon, how I want to do it. I've just been thinking about search. I've been writing. I've been having my assistant help me write a book about some shit I'm trying to turn it to a movie. See, I got movie ideas. I'm writing my book to turn it into a movie. You feel me? That's how I'm starting my book. I thought about my movie first, then I said I'm gonna write a book to help me with my movie. And now I'm finna have an old cartoon spinoff about one of these books. Cause boy, I needed to see this bullshit here. I needed to see this bullshit.
Town American life in 1900. Disney had created a magical place where white nostalgia could exist without the complications of actual American version of small town America circa 1900 to 1910, complete with barbershop quartets, horse-drawn carriages, and turn-of-the-century charm. What it didn't include were any black people, despite the fact that Black Americans were very much part of small-town American life in 1900. Disney had created a magical place where white nostalgia could exist without the complications of actual American history. Frontierland told the
So even Disney World was whites only. And niggas couldn't even go to Disney World. That's basically what he just said. Disney World was whites only. Nigga, you can't get in. You couldn't even go to Disney World, nigga. You gotta wait till they build some shit like a Six Flags or something for your ass to go to. They got Disney World and Disney Land. They had land first. I guess Disneyland was first.
The story of westward expansion as a noble adventure, minimizing indigenous perspectives and presenting white settlement as natural progress. Liberty Square and later attractions like the Hall of Presidents taught children about American history through narratives that centered white founding fathers and white achievements, while reducing black contributions to a brief mention of emancipation. Disney wasn't just entertaining families. They were providing historical education that taught children which Americans mattered and which ones existed.
I hate
They
that
were providing
picture.
historical education.
I hate this picture. Why is only one black boy in this picture? Two, one all the way in the back, and it's a mixed jit in the front. Why is the real black kid all the way in the back? And I don't like where he positioned that, right in front of the damn teacher. I don't like that. I don't like that shit. I don't like this picture. I really don't like this picture. This picture will tell you a lot if you pay attention to it. Just look at this shit.
That taught children which Americans mattered and which ones existed only as footnotes to white achievement. This is where Disney.
How can you keep your music original in 2026? Start with how you create it. Meet Co-Producer, a plugin that finds samples that fit your music.
Disney's influence became truly insidious. Movies could be dismissed as entertainment, but theme parks felt like education. When families spent thousands of dollars to visit Disney World, they weren't just buying rides. They were buying into a version of American identity that felt authoritative because it was expensive, elaborate, and endorsed by millions of other families making the same pilgrimage. Children who grew up visiting Disney parks learned that real American history looked like Main Street, USA, sounded like the Hall of Presidents, and centered the experiences of people who looked like the majority of Disney's characters. The genius of Disney's system was that it made white supremacy feel wholesome. Kids didn't learn to hate black people. They learned not to think about black people at all, except as background characters, service providers, or historical victims who had been rescued by white heroes and white institutions. Disney taught children that white experiences were universal, white stories were timeless, and white perspectives were objective truth, rather than particular viewpoints shaped by racial advantage. In 1956, Disney hired Floyd Norman as their first black animator, but his experience reveals how the company maintained its racial hierarchy even when integrating its workforce. Norman worked on classics like Sleeping Beauty and The Jungle Book, but he often found himself the only black person in creative meetings, surrounded by colleagues who had spent their careers drawing the racial stereotypes that civil rights organizations had been protesting for decades. Norman later described feeling both welcomed by some colleagues and isolated by the company's overwhelming whiteness, knowing that his presence was historic, but also recognizing how much work remained to change Disney's fundamental approach to racial representation. By the 1990s, Disney was facing renewed criticism, but their response revealed how little their basic approach had changed. The 1992 film Aladdin featured lyrics about Arab lands, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. Arab American groups protested the stereotypical imagery, and Disney eventually changed the lyrics for home video releases. But the pattern was familiar. Create stereotypical content, face organized opposition, make minimal changes while maintaining the profitable core product. When Disney finally created their first black princess in 2009 with The Princess and the Frog, the film generated as much controversy as praise.
It took them bitches 70 years. It took the motherfucker 70 years. 70 years to create a black princess. 70 fucking years. You gotta think about it, boy. You talking about 70 years. You talking about how much shit about you? They waited to 2010, basically, nigga. 2000. We gonna round up to 2010, nigga. They let Y2K go by, where everybody thought the world was finna end, and we gonna party like the year 2009, like it's 1999. They waited a whole a decade after that, nigga. 10 piece after that, nigga, to create the Black Princess. And then, what was the problem with the Black Princess when they did it?
Critics pointed out that Princess and the Frog, the film generated as much controversy as praise. Critics pointed out that Tiana spent most of the movie transformed into a frog, that the story emphasized hard work themes that echoed respectability politics, and that the villain used voodoo imagery that reinforced stereotypes about black
bitch-ass shit.
Even Disney's attempts at positive representation revealed how decades of racial programming had shaped their storytelling instincts. But the most revealing moment in Disney's racial reckoning came in 2020, when nationwide protests following George Floyd's murder forced American institutions to confront their roles in perpetuating white supremacy. Disney's response was telling. They announced that Splash Mountain, the theme park attraction based on Song of the South characters, would be rethemed to The Princess and the Frog. They also added content warnings to older films on Disney+, acknowledging that content included negative depictions and/or mistreatment of people or cultures. These changes came 74 years after the NAACP first protested Song of the South. Disney didn't proactively address their racial content. They responded to public pressure, market forces, and social media campaigns that made their historical practices too expensive to maintain. The company that had spent decades teaching children to see whiteness as universal and blackness as marginal was now admitting that civil rights leaders had been right all along, but only after generations of children had already internalized the lessons Disney had been teaching. Here's what makes Disney's racial programming so dangerous. It worked exactly as intended. Multiple generations of American children grew up seeing Disney films, visiting Disney parks, and absorbing Disney's version of American identity without recognizing it as racial propaganda. They learned to see white characters as relatable heroes, white history as universal truth, and white perspectives as objective. Children had already internalized the lessons Disney had been teaching. Here's what makes Disney's racial programming so dangerous. It worked exactly as intended. Multiple generations of American children grew up seeing Disney films, visiting Disney parks, and absorbing Disney's version of American identity without recognizing it as racial propaganda. They learned to see white characters as relatable heroes, white history as universal truth, and white perspectives as objective reality. They learned that black characters existed to serve white stories, that black history began with white salvation, and that black voices mattered only when they entertained white audiences or confirmed white narratives. The impact extends far beyond entertainment. Disney's cultural influence shaped how children understood citizenship, belonging, and national identity. Kids who grew up
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one, to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality right now.
When it's hard to know what to believe,
these dino nuggets are 0% real dinosaur.
It's easy to believe in nothing. You can believe in better with Stonyfield Organic because we make yogurt without using toxic pesticides with milk from pasture-raised cows. That's more to believe.
But with Disney's version of American history, we're more likely to see contemporary racial inequalities as natural rather than constructed, more likely to view civil rights movements as complaints rather than corrections, and more likely to believe that white perspectives represented common sense rather than particular interests shaped by centuries of racial advantage. Disney's power came from their ability to make their racial ideology feel like childhood innocence rather than political programming. Parents who would never explicitly teach their children white supremacist beliefs happily paid Disney to do it through characters, songs, and magical experiences that felt wholesome and traditional. The company understood that racial attitudes formed in childhood were more durable than political arguments made to adults, and they spent decades perfecting techniques for embedding racial hierarchy in content that felt like pure entertainment. Today's Disney acknowledges some past problems while maintaining the profitable elements of their racial system. They've added content warnings to old films while continuing to profit from songs like Zippity Doo-Dah. They've rethemed Splash Mountain while keeping most of their park attractions focused on white historical narratives. They've created diverse characters while maintaining storytelling formulas that center white experiences and perspectives. But the deeper issue isn't Disney's past. It's how their racial programming shaped American culture in ways we're still discovering. Generations of children learned from Disney that white stories were universal, white characters were relatable, and white perspectives were objective truth. They learned that blackness was something to be entertained by, inspired by, or grateful for, but not something to center, trust, or follow. They learned that American history was fundamentally a white story, with black people playing supporting roles as problems to be solved or servants to be appreciated. The FBI files that revealed Walt Disney's cooperation with government surveillance programs during the Red Scare show how thoroughly Disney understood their cultural power and how willingly they used it to support white political interests. The company that taught children to see racial hierarchy as natural entertainment was also reporting suspected communists to federal agents, connecting their racial programming to broader efforts to suppress challenges to American power structures. This is why civil rights organizations have been fighting Disney for over 70 years, and why that fight continues today. Disney isn't just an entertainment company. They're one of the most powerful storytelling institutions on Earth, with influence over how children understand identity, history, and belonging. When Disney tells stories that center whiteness and marginalize blackness, they're not just reflecting American culture, they're actively creating it, shaping how millions of children will understand race for the rest of their lives. The content warnings Disney added to older films represent an admission that their programming worked exactly as civil rights leaders warned it would. Disney spent decades teaching children that racial stereotypes were harmless entertainment, that white perspectives were universal truth, and that black voices mattered only when they served white stories. Now they're quietly acknowledging that this content was harmful while continuing to profit from the cultural systems they helped create. But here's what Disney still won't admit. Their racial programming wasn't a mistake or a reflection of different times. It was a deliberate business strategy that used childhood innocence to make white supremacy feel magical. They understood that children who learned to see whiteness as heroic and blackness as secondary would carry those beliefs into adulthood, creating generations of Americans who would defend racial inequality without recognizing it as racism, because Disney had taught them to see it as natural, traditional. It was connecting their racial programs to a white story, with black people playing white stories while maintaining storytelling formulas that center white experiences and perspectives. But the deeper issue isn't Disney's past. It's how their racial programming shaped American culture in ways we're still discovering. Generations of children learned from Disney that white stories were universal, white characters were relatable, and white perspectives were objective truth. They learned that blackness was something to be entertained by, inspired by, or grateful for, but not something to center, trust, or follow. They learned that American history was fundamentally a white story, with Black people playing supporting roles as problems to be solved or servants to be appreciated. The FBI files that revealed Walt Disney's cooperation with government surveillance programs during the Red Scare show how thoroughly Disney understood their cultural power and how willingly they used it to support white political interests. The company that taught children to see racial hierarchy as natural entertainment was also reporting suspected communists to federal agents, connecting their racial programming to broader efforts to suppress challenges to American power structures. This is why civil rights organizations have been fighting Disney for over 70 years, and why that fight continues today. Disney isn't just an entertainment company. They're one of the most powerful storytelling institutions on Earth, with influence over how children understand identity, history, and belonging. When Disney tells stories that center whiteness and marginalize Blackness, they're not just reflecting American culture, they're actively creating it, shaping how millions of children will understand race for the rest of their lives. The content warnings Disney added to older films represent an admission that their programming worked exactly as civil rights leaders warned it would. Disney spent decades teaching children that racial stereotypes were harmless entertainment, that white perspectives were universal truth, and that Black voices mattered only when they served white stories. Now they're quietly acknowledging that this content was harmful while continuing to profit from the cultural systems they helped create. But here's what Disney still won't admit. Their racial programming wasn't a mistake or a reflection of different times. It was a deliberate business strategy that used childhood innocence to make white supremacy feel magical. They understood that children who learned to see whiteness as heroic and Blackness as secondary would carry those beliefs into adulthood, creating generations of Americans who would defend racial inequality without recognizing it as racism, because Disney had taught them to see it as natural, traditional, and wholesome. The mouse that started as a simple cartoon character became the mascot for one of the most successful racial programming operations in American history. Disney didn't just entertain children, they educated them about who mattered, who belonged, and who deserved to be centered in American stories. And they did it so skillfully that most people still don't recognize Disney's racial content as political programming rather than innocent entertainment. This systematic manipulation of childhood innocence to advance white supremacist ideology represents one of the—
I bet it won't be no more motherfucking rats in this motherfucking house on TV. I wouldn't give a fuck how motherfucking much you want to get on there and try to put Mickey Mouse. Matter of fact, she don't even put Mickey Mouse on when she got my tablet. She be putting on the dog, dude. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever the fuck. What the fuck the dude name? Whatever the dog name is. That's who she finna watch from now on. And Looney Tunes. I don't give a fuck. We finna do investigation on Looney Tunes ass too. Fuck that. We finna do an investigation on all you bitches. Cause what the fuck is that shit?
Hey, I'm a hustler on a mission. Grinding for that spot, a brand new pot to piss in. Trying to school my partners home, they pay attention. I'm sticking to my vision, on the road to the riches. Every single day, I'm a hustler on a mission. Trying to get 100 M's, nigga, I ain't kidding. I'm on a mission, 24/7, 365, until I reach the